Matt, welcome. Hey, we're going to talk a lot about things that are coming in and out of the kitchen. We're going to talk about food allergies, substitutions for food allergies, what to look for, different ways to identify. This is where I edit.
Okay. Identify what?
Yeah. Identify allergies in different food products.
Oh, I see. As far as like reading the ingredients and the labels and
right. So we're going to talk about reading the labels and the ingredients and all that, and identifying what's okay and what's not okay based on what allergies a child would have. So we're going to go down this list here. These are all kinds of kids that have been here or here now. And we'll talk about some food allergies. So Mr. CM has got a milk allergy. So what do we do with the milk allergy? What do we substitute?
His mom and dad provide a substitute for the milk. As far as substituting, most of the time I just leave the cheese out. If we're having something with cheese in it or something with a cheese sauce, then I'll substitute, like say a sandwich or a wrap or something of that sort.
So do we need to distinguish between a dairy allergy and a milk allergy?
No, it's the same thing.
It's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's something you're cooking with, you're taking out the cheese, or you're taking out what else did you say?
I just don't give it to them.
Don't give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, especially like if it's like nachos.
Right.
I mean, cheese sauce is the main ingredient.
Right.
You know, so there's not really much I can do with that other than substitute, like I said, maybe a sandwich or a wrap.
How do you make the cheese sauce for your nachos? Because it's great. I've had some that's not so great.
Okay.
What do you put in there?
I use a can of the nacho cheese sauce.
Right.
And a block of Velveeta. And,
okay.
a little bit of milk.
And a little bit of milk.
Uh-huh.
The other thing for milk allergy would be soy milk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So there's soy milk, there's almond milk.
Mm-hmm. There's rice milk.
Rice milk.
Mm-hmm.
Goat's milk sometimes. Parents will bring in goat's milk. No?
I've never had it here.
Okay. All right.
That's a good question. I don't know as far as goat's milk, whether that
right.
would be a substitute for cow's milk or whether it would contain maybe the same, like the lactose and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know.
Oh, maybe so.
That's a good question.
The other thing, because we are a tree nut and peanut free facility, the question was, well, if they're bringing in almond milk, that's a nut milk, is that an issue? And all the answers I've come up with is it's not an issue.
Okay.
It doesn't contain enough to constitute a threat to another child.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm getting from the food program.
So if Ollie was to drink some almond milk, he would be okay with it?
No, because the expectation is that Ollie's not going to be drinking that milk.
Right.
The reality is it could get spilt on him.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's something to continue to look at. But I haven't got a lot of concrete stuff on that.
Okay. I think that was kind of a question that came up in the very beginning, was as far as the kids that have the almond milk substitute,
right.
whether in fact we'd have to eliminate that from those kids' breakfast and lunches because of the fact that it is almond milk, a nut milk, in the same classroom as Ollie.
Right. Yeah. What about this kiddo here, LK's got allergic to dairy, but the parent has communicated that it's okay if it's cooked in the food.
Mm-hmm.
So if milk's cooked into a food, if cheese is cooked into a food, so it's important to differentiate where they say they have a dairy allergy. Ask more questions. Find out if it's raw dairy or whether it's something that can be cooked in. Because if it can be cooked in and you didn't know that, you're creating a lot of extra work for yourself.
Right.
So now that we're tree nut peanut free, we're not buying any products that have tree nuts or peanuts or made in a factory where tree nuts are manufactured.
Right.
However, then it brings the issue of parents bringing in outside food. So parents bringing in some peanut butter cookies for a birthday.
Right.
So that's why it's important that every food item that's brought in from outside, whether it's a birthday party or whether it's a potluck, comes through the kitchen. And the expectation is for the cook to look through that food, look at the labels, talk to the parents about the ingredients that they put in there to make sure that it's peanut and tree nut free. And if it's not, then that food is not going into that classroom. Maybe share with a different classroom on that day, but we're working hard to educate our parents to not bring in anything that may be peanut, tree nut contained.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got nuts and dairy. We got all beans, even green beans.
And yeast.
So green beans and yeast. Talk to me about all beans. So any beans, such as baked beans, lima beans, which is eventually turns into a baked bean, right? Green beans. What else? Any other beans that we serve?
That's
Okay.
all that we. That's all that we serve.
Right.
Right.
So a child allergic to yeast, how do you handle that in the kitchen?
She doesn't get bread, doesn't get English muffins, doesn't get bagels, doesn't get dinner rolls. So in turn, I try and have some tortillas on hand that I can give her. You know,
Good
if
substitute.
we're having a sandwich or you know, muffins or bagels in the morning, then I'll give her a tortilla with some jelly rather than the muffin or the bagel, because all those contain yeast.
What about pancake mix? Does that contain yeast?
No, that's baking powder.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's okay with that. Tortillas, same thing. She's okay with the tortillas. There's no yeast in those.
What about cookies that are coming from the grocery store, City Market?
No yeast usually. No.
Baking soda. And
Baking
stuff.
soda, baking powder. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, those leavening agents rather than the yeast.
Let's see what else we got. Let's find some good ones. So this is a milk allergy, and this family has chosen almond milk as a substitute, and they say minimal amount of yogurt or ice cream is allowed. So they've got a milk or a dairy allergy. Is that the same as a lactose allergy? Is that
it's usually
that's what it is in the dairy that they're allergic to?
Right, is the lactose. Yes.
But in this case, they're okay with a little bit of yogurt or a little bit of ice cream.
They might have somewhat of a tolerance to it.
Right.
Some are going to be a lot more susceptible.
Yep.
To something like that, just like AL. He can not drink milk, but he can eat every other dairy product there is. He can eat the sour cream, he can eat the yogurt, he can eat the cheese. So I don't know if it's maybe during the processing of it, maybe it kills off or changes some of that stuff into something else to where it doesn't contain enough of it to where it's going to affect him enough.
Yeah.
Whereas with the milk, it may contain enough of the lactose to where, and then there's a couple of the kids we have here who aren't allergic to the lactose in the milk, but they're allergic to the protein in the
So they have a
milk.
protein allergy.
So they have a protein allergy in the milk, but they can have anything else with protein in it, but it's the protein in the milk. So then in turn they can't have any beef because that protein is carried over into the beef from the cow or the steer or whatever that it was taken from. So that's a kind of a touchy one too.
Right. You can see it's so important to ask questions. You're gonna have to learn to have good dialogue with your parents. Don't just take a simple, well, they have a milk allergy, and run with it.
Right.
Ask questions. Ask more about that, because there's, like we're talking about here, all different elements of milk and dairy and protein. All of them are related or could be related to that milk allergy. So the more you know, the easier it is to accommodate. And this is the one time where kids have food allergies, that one example of when we allow parents to bring in outside food. So our policy is no outside foods to come in unless they have a dietary plan in place, signed by a physician. So they can't just say, well, I want my child to eat raisins with every meal. And here's a note, I'm writing you a note. No, we need a pediatrician to sign off on that to be able to say, yep, they're going to do that. We need raisins in every meal, and here's why. So we need, yes, they do, and we also need the why from the physician. So this helps us get rid of a bunch of the crazy requests that sometimes parents make, such as they need to eat raisins 5 times a day. Right.
And some of these milk substitutes that the kids have here, it's not because they have an allergy, it's personal preference. Some of the kids prefer the almond milk or the soy milk
Right.
rather than the cow's milk.
Right.
I mean, they could still drink cow's milk.
Yep.
Because they're not allergic to it, but it's a personal preference thing that the kids have, that they would rather drink those milks.
And so because we work with and we contract with CACFP, which is a Child Adult Food Care Program, we have two forms with regard to food component substitutes, but and the one form is just for soy milk only. So a parent without a doctor's note, without a doctor's signature, can sign off on the soy milk as a preference. We don't need a doctor's note to be able to provide soy milk for them. If it's almond milk, if it's any other type of milk, rice milk, then we need the doctor's note. And the doctor has to distinguish between whether it's a special need or whether it's a parental preference. Mm-hmm. And so that has some other implications. So all good stuff to be aware of.
Yeah, and probably the main thing with so many of those things is read the labels, read the ingredients. You know, and those things vary from one brand to another.
Right.
Like Honey Made graham crackers, they're okay. Other brands of graham crackers, they're made in a factory that uses peanuts and tree nuts. Vanilla wafers, animal crackers, a lot of those things, they vary from one make, one company to the next. So just because this brand says it may contain, doesn't mean that all of them do. So you really have to look at the different brands and really read the labels and check the ingredients. Some of them say may contain. Well, that doesn't tell you specifically or for sure whether it does or not.
Right.
But yet, your best bet is just to completely steer clear and stay away from those because of the fact that you don't know. If it does contain something like that, without your knowledge, and you give it to a kid and he has a reaction, well, it's still back on me because I risked that and I shouldn't have. You know, I should have just eliminated that and not had anything to do with it to begin with.
Right, right. So we look at OM here. We've got the severe peanut and tree nut allergy, but we also have a pea and poppy seed allergy. Tell me about that.
The poppy seed just came up. Came up because I started serving those lemon poppy seed bars.
Okay.
And so Lindsay, his mom.
It's fine.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if I should.
She had lots of Lindsays.
Okay. All right. And one of the things too is if it's a contact allergy or if it's an ingestion allergy.
Good point.
Some kids, they can come in contact with something
like peanut butter,
and not have an allergic reaction to it. But if they eat it or ingest it, then they're going to have an allergic reaction to it.
Right.
With the poppy seeds, it turns out that it is a contact allergy.
Oh.
So, you know, if they're not sure, she just took some poppy seeds and rubbed it on his skin and found out that it was a contact allergy rather than actual ingesting or consuming.
So please get that. Understand there's a difference between contact and ingested, and ask them which it is. Let's see if we have any other interesting ones in here.
Yeah, that's that one.
Allergic to dairy and beef because this child obviously has a protein allergy.
Along with him, same thing.
Okay. So again, we talk about this is the exception where we allow parents to bring some food in. So typically what we'll do is we'll have a box that will have the child's name on it, and then might be some special granola bars or crackers or chips or even a bread or something like that. What are other substitutes that parents might bring in?
Pretzels.
And
there again, that varies from one brand to another.
Yep. And Pat has caught parents bringing in food, and he even read the label and was like, oh, it says it contains what your child is allergic to.
Right.
But isn't it, even in that case, the parent was like, said that it's okay because of some other.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a partnership and communication, and it's going to be a learning process because allergies are only getting more and more complicated.
They sure are.
Yeah.
And just more and more of them. And some of the things that you would think would be so obvious to maybe contain peanuts and tree nuts, like say Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies, completely peanut and tree nut free. You would think, if anything, they would have been made in a factory that manufactures peanuts and tree nuts.
My guess is Chips Ahoy has many factories.
Yeah, yeah, and there again, you know, I mean, so many of these allergies have just, they probably been around for a long time, but
Yeah.
they had just gone undiagnosed
Right.
or misdiagnosed because they weren't familiar. They didn't know.
Yeah.
And so now that they're starting to know and starting to recognize that, okay, this is what's causing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's so few of them, and some of these companies have been making these certain things for
Yeah.
75, 80, 90, 100 years, using peanuts and tree nuts.
Yeah.
And so parents say, well, why don't they do something different? Well, you can't expect those companies to turn around and build a whole new manufacturing facility or retool their manufacturing
Because there
equipment or
are
whatever, just
other
because
alternatives for them.
And it's getting a lot better now.
Yeah.
There's a lot more out there to offer. And the information, there's a lot more information available now than there used to be in the past.
Right.
Which makes it easier, but still, yet at the same time, it can it can get kind of complicated and confusing and a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to figure out, okay, I have this, but they can't have. Sometimes I'll have 4 different variations of the same meal set out here on the counter because, like, say for example, taco salad. Okay, that girl, she can't have the beans or the
Right.
cheese in taco salad.
Right.
But yet another one, they can have the beans and the cheese, but then yet another one can't have the hamburger, but they can have the beans, but not the cheese.
Right.
And so so sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 different variations of the same meal that I have to serve to meet their requirements.
Yep. And so we'll help on our allergy sheet by dialing in and maybe making some notes on what are those good substitutions, and the reality is you just learn them. Again, parents are, I'd almost say, just have been dumbfounded, just been astonished with how well we're willing to work with them on the child's food allergies. So it's great customer relations by making sure that we're paying attention and we're making those extra steps to keep their kids safe. Let's talk about what we're trying to avoid. Ultimately, we're trying to avoid anaphylactic shock. We're trying to avoid airway constriction. Yeah, we're so let's say one of these you end up sending peanuts into a classroom, and a child has a severe peanut allergy. So as the cook, you also become sideline first responder, because you need to make sure, along with administration, the director, that we've got an EpiPen in the closet in our medicine cabinet for that child. We've got Benadryl, and we've got a doctor's note and a doctor's plan on when to administer what. And so you'll learn about that in our first aid and CPR training and medication administration class. But be aware, we are preventing, what could be a life-threatening reaction from one of these food allergies, which ultimately is going to be treated with Benadryl, possibly if it's mild, or if they're having a major reaction, with an EpiPen and maybe 2 EpiPens. And I don't know any staff member that is ever looking forward to putting an EpiPen into the thigh of a 3-year-old. So this is so important that we've got a good handle on our food allergies, and we don't take it for granted. Right. And that we're, often, like Pat said, we've got taco salad for the population, but then we've got 3 other plates in here with some variations, and you've got to be organized. You got to know when your kids are going to be here, what days they're here, and have communication with staff so you know how to prepare accordingly for that day. All right, there's going to be a lot more about our food program. So the food allergy stuff is a continued education process. There's a lot to learn.
And it's more and more on the forefront every day. It seems like people and doctors, physicians are starting to realize the seriousness of it.
Right. And
just how many kids actually do have some sort of allergy. Whether it's, and there again, the severity of it. When Amanda worked here, her daughter, she could eat 2 or 3 strawberries and she would be okay. Any more than that, then she would have an allergic reaction to it.
Right.
We've had kids in the past where ascorbic acid or citric acid, like from oranges or pineapple, something real high in an acid like that, would give them a rash on their lips and around their mouth. Right. And so we would have to eliminate those, which But it isn't common, but it's more common than some. It's that's not even really an allergy. It's more of a sensitivity issue rather than an allergy issue.
Sure.
I've talked to parents who said their kids with tomato sauce, because it's high in ascorbic acid and citric acid, they'll get a little bit of a rash on their lips and around their mouth because of that.
Right.
And then there again, like we mentioned earlier, which we didn't mention here, is so how many of the kids will actually grow out of it. And as they get older and build up more of a not maybe immunity is the wrong word, but
the tolerance.
Tolerance, that's the word I'm looking for. They build up more of a tolerance to it as they get a little older and grow out of it. TK, he's one example of that. When he first started coming here, there was a long laundry list of things that he couldn't have, and that included soybean oil. But they process soybean oil in different ways too. They extract the oil. There's a cold pressed and then there's a hot pressed.
Mm-hmm.
When they heat it up, they're going to get more oil out of it faster. So it's more productive and they're going to make more money because it's going to be more cost effective. He could have the cold pressed. He couldn't have the heat pressed stuff. Then as time went on, then that was completely eliminated. Then it didn't matter so much anymore.
Yeah, very good. Talk about tolerances. So talk to the parents about tolerances. Talk to them about introducing foods. And a parent with a child with food allergies should be have good communication with the pediatrician or child nutritionist and get advice from nutritionists as far as when to introduce new foods and how to introduce new foods. We want new foods introduced at home in that controlled environment at home versus introducing them here. And so maybe one last thing as far as introducing. Now here in Florida we start at 12 months. So would you help me by mentioning some of the foods that we are not going to introduce or slowly introduce from 12 months on up? Whether our infants are a different situation, we'll put a clip on here about our infants, but with a child that's 12 months, what kind of foods are you going to hold off introducing at 12 months? Because some of those foods are implemented between 12 and 24. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Can you think of any of those foods? Like, let me ask you a couple questions. I'm not even sure the answer. What about honey? What about peanut butter?
I've heard mixed reviews about those.
Right.
About both of them. Peanut butter in particular, I've heard it said that you shouldn't start a child or introduce peanut butter to a child until they're at least 2 years old.
Okay.
That's what I've heard.
Right.
Now, whether it's written in stone, I don't know.
But the nice thing is now that we're peanut free,
we don't have to worry about it.
That's simple. That's true. For years we...
Honey, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'll probably delete this part of it.
Okay.
We're really not helping them out at all.
We're just kind of creating conversation. Stop! Nothing else.
All right. Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So let me just do a wrap up. All right. That's a wrap.